Today is a City Council study session. It's January 10th. We have an exciting topic today, and we can tell by the packed house how attractive it is. A big draw here, but we'll start off with a roll call.
Mayor Good.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Montoya.
Here.
Councilwoman Kentelme.
Here.
Councilman Member Rusing.
Here.
Councilman Sischka.
Here.
Councilman Tenney.
Yes, ma'am.
And the record will reflect that Councilman Moore is excused from the meeting.
Well, we'll move on then to this discussion of the solid waste rate study.
All right. Well,
Hi,
thank you
Janet.
Thank you for that fantastic introduction. Janet Ramsey, Public Works Department, and I have with me this afternoon Brady Higgs. He is the Superintendent of Solid Waste. And also with us is Dave Davis of MSW Consultants. The purpose of the presentation today is to share with you the results of a recent solid waste rate study. Brady's going to highlight the services, and then we'll ask for questions. Mr. Davis is going to go over his report, and then we'll ask again if you have any questions. And then finally, we'll come back to you at the end and ask if you have any questions. And then once again, on January 24th, that's the date on which we'll come to ask you to set the to fix the rates for solid waste going forward. Before we get started, I just wanted to mention that usually I understand there's a dress protocol for the amount of money that you're asking for. Based on that, Mr. Davis wore a suit. I don't want you to be confused. Brady and I thought about going back and putting our pajamas on. We're not asking for $1 million. So let's get that clear right off the bat. But we did want to talk just a little bit about, or I'll intro a little bit about a couple of things that are important topics. First of all, we need to remember that solid waste is one of the public works enterprise funds. We have enterprise funds in water, wastewater, and solid waste. What that means to all of us is that we're self-sufficient. We base our services provided off of the rates that we collect from our customers that we serve. And in fact, we are not typically subsidized by taxes, neither sales or property taxes. So it's really important that our rates are accurate, they're valid, and of course that they're validated. So that's why we hire the third party. That helps us to not only to establish the rates and forecast going forward our needs, but also to validate the requests that we have from you. So spoiler alert. We are asking for a little bit of an increase. Solid waste is a service and a trucking industry. We bring the waste in ourselves. Other people also bring in waste, and then we take it back out. We don't have a landfill any longer. We do have a closed landfill that we're managing until all eternity, so I'm guessing that's kind of why we don't continue to have a landfill. They're a headache, but we do have a transfer station, and so we take that waste in, and then we take it back out, and there's a whole lot of things that go on in between that. Brady will give you a little bit more of a highlight about that. But we all know the impacts that of trucking and all of those things. Also, a few months ago, the HR director came in here and he told you about the dire circumstances of retention throughout the city. He used solid waste as the poster child. There was a reason for that because, again, we're those people who have the competing interests. We are services and we are truck driving, so we have CDL drivers. And those two things have really impacted our services. We got the across the board wage increase. We really appreciate that, and it did make a big difference. But we want to be transparent here as we go into this. A lot of what's driving our rates and a lot of what will drive them going forward is the fact that we're already at a deficit. We've been struggling through a lot of the situations, and as I told Brandon when he talked about the personnel issues and the dire circumstances there, I said, we are one good flu from not being able to pick up your trash. That's how serious the consequences are. So we're behind the 8 ball here. We really need to pick up and catch up, and some of that is reported in here. That said, again, you know, I'm the spoiler alert, so I will just tell you that doing the math, this year's first rate increase, it's 31 cents a week to the average residential customer. I think that's really nominal, and that's why Brady and I, we didn't go put on our PJs, but I think we could have, and that would have been okay. So, full disclosure, again, a good portion of what we need is to increase staffing in 2022 This solid waste, just the residential team, worked about 2,100 hours of overtime at a cost of about $77,000. That doesn't sound like a whole lot, but if you understand how lean this team is, you understand that what that means to Brady is that he's often not able to approve leave time, PTO time, and that really has a huge impact on our retention. Our people can't ask for leave time in advance, and, well, they can ask, but we have trouble approving it because we never know when a flu's going to sweep through, and every day is a challenge in getting all of the trucks out there to collect all of the trash from all of our customers. All things considered, I was surprised that what Mr. Davis is going to tell you is a relatively small increase overall. Our mission statement on behalf of Public Works Solid Waste is to provide quality, customer service-oriented solid waste recycling services and to protect the health and safety of our community, and that's a big issue. So as Brady goes through and he talks about a lot of the extra services that we offer, that a lot of our competitors, in fact, most of our competitors do not offer, you should pay attention to the services that we provide and the things that we're doing to be good stewards of our community and to protect our community in that way. So I think I am ready to turn it over to Brady, and he'll give you the operational impacts, and then we'll come back and ask questions.
Afternoon, Mayor, Council. Like Janet said, Brady Higgs, Solid Waste Superintendent. Like I said, I'm just going to kind of go over the operations and what solid waste is kind of about, what we do, what we offer. So here, if you will, next slide. So this is just kind of a 2022 overview. The three primary operations in solid waste is residential, commercial collection, and then we own and operate our transfer station. The division is comprised of 29 and a half full-time staff. That includes supervisors, drivers, and our 3 admin personnel. We provide service to roughly 22,000 residential accounts, which is, that number's been growing over the last couple of years, and houses popping up here and there. So it's been busy. That next bullet is how many days of service that we provided. So out of last year, we provided 341 days of collection service. So the transfer station's a 6-day-a-week operation, but we also have collection service that we provide in the downtown area on Sundays to make sure it can make through the weekends when we have some of these events and gatherings in the downtown area. And then the transfer station was open 311 days, and we served roughly 100,000 customers through the inbound and outbound scale out there, and received over 81,000 tons worth of waste that was hauled in. Residential collection. So these are the trucks that come by your guys' house each and every week and pick up a green can and pick up a blue can. That's our minimum service level that we require or provide to our residents. So we provide a 65-gallon garbage can and a 65-gallon recycle can. That's incorporated into the residential rate that you pay each month. We have increased collection options that are available upon request. So if you need a couple extra garbage cans at the house because you got a big family, or you want a couple cans for the summer because you're cleaning up some brush, we also provide those as well. The next slide goes into the additional services that are incorporated into our residential rate. So we provide 4 annual events. One being Christmas tree collection, which we happen to be doing this week. I know you guys have been doing some outreach for us at your guys' meetings and letting people know. So typically we do a 1-week event. We travel through each city neighborhood and collect live Christmas trees. And then we bring those back to the transfer station, process them on site, and create wood chips and mulch. The next event is our brush drop-off event. So we provide an opportunity for residents to self-haul brush, whether they're clearing around their property, right next to the house. I know with us being kind of in an wildland urban interface, we try and promote as much as we can, and we try and do it preceding the fire season. So, and on that one, the last event, we had a total of 818 customers that came out and through 5 Saturdays and dropped off brush at no cost. All they had to show was their city ID or utility bill, and we let them come on in and offload. Our next event is our hazardous household waste event, which is it's It's kind of been a transitioning event for the last 4 years. We've kind of gone a different route, and we've been doing curbside, which I think has been very beneficial to not have customers hauling leaking paint cans and other chemicals and drive it to the transfer station. So a third party comes out to your door, you leave it out in front, they come collect it all, bring it back to the yard, sort it, and it's been a very, very beneficial event. The one thing that I want to hone in on that is, it allows the residents to safely dispose of old or unwanted hazardous waste that could potentially have environmental impacts. And that's the biggest thing that we want to hone in on, is making sure it's getting disposed of properly. And that, you can see, we had last year, we had 774 customers utilize that service, and we collected 25.5 tons worth of paints, chemicals, pesticides, stuff like that. And our final event, which I would say is probably the event that we have the most participation out of, and that's our bulk item collection event. We allow residents to place items large or, brush, could be cleaned out the shed, cleaned up the yard. They just leave it at the curb, and city crews come through and hand load all that material, allow the neighborhood, the community to kind of get cleaned up at least one time a year, so that way that gets incorporated. And you can see, we collected over 451 tons last year for that event, and that's kind of the last 2 years it's been fairly consistent. Maybe people being at home a little bit more, but it's been a good turnout. So good to see people getting stuff cleaned up and getting rid of it. Next section is going to be our commercial collection. So this type of collection is provided to businesses, restaurants, and construction debris. So we offer a variety of different dumpster sizes and frequency of collection. So the truck that's depicted here is a front loader servicing like a 4-yard container that you guys see in the alleyways, next to businesses, restaurants, that such. We offer 6-day-a-week garbage collection, so Monday through Saturday. 3-day-a-week recycle collection, which is Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And then we provide that construction service in our roll-off dumpsters 2 days a week. And we are roughly providing service to over 1,200 accounts throughout the city. And the transfer station. So this is the kind of the third and final thing. Great picture there. Little rainbow over that.
Yeah, already.
Yeah.
What do you guys want? You can have it.
So a lot of people, what it comes down to is, what is a transfer station? It's a central location or site where waste is brought in by collection vehicles or self-haulers, and then it is sorted, processed, or ultimately hauled away to its final disposal site. In our case, the final disposal site for garbage, it's hauled out to the Gray Wolf landfill off of Highway 169, which is owned and operated by Waste Management. And then our recyclables are hauled down to the City of Phoenix North Gateway Transfer Station to their material recovery facility, where they sort and bale and process all that type of material. Like I said early on, it's a 6-day-a-week operation at the transfer station. Typically, we average 250 tons a day and roughly 300 to 400 transactions a day. So it's busy. It's used by a lot of folks, a lot of businesses, small businesses, landscapers, private haulers, do-it-yourselfers, all the above. At the transfer station, we accept multiple different types of waste streams. So your municipal solid waste or household trash, brush waste, inert debris, which includes concrete, rock, asphalt, dirt, scrap metal, electronic waste, used oil and antifreeze. And we also operate the recycle center out front, which is just 8 or 9 dumpsters that allow residents to bring in commingled recycling that is outside of their standard service that they have. So if they bought a TV over the weekend or some patio furniture and need to get rid of the boxes, those are open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that you can self-haul down there and dispose of those large bulky boxes, or if your can's full at home. So that's all I kind of got for at least the operation. I don't know if you guys have any questions about what we do or day-to-day stuff. And if not, we can pass it along to Dave.
Well, thank you, Brady, and I want to thank you for the almost daily updates we got over a series of our winter storms, and I think we're not quite done with those yet. So we appreciate that, and as usual, we were able to keep the primary arterials open and the feeders to those. So I think everybody that I know has complimented your capabilities there and your performance. That's terrific. So you were mentioning, is this going to come in the rate study or your request for additional staff?
Yeah.
Mayor, the request for additional staff is in the rate study, and Mr. Davis is going to talk to you about that more.
Okay, good.
So really, Brady's presenting the nuts and bolts, and Mr. Davis is going to do the dollars and cents.
Good.
So if you have operational questions, this would be
Well, I frequently keep an eye on some of the alleyways around the commercial corridor and the core of the city, and I frequently see some of these restaurants with horribly overflowing dumpsters. So how do we control that other than frequency of pickup, or the fact that maybe one of these restaurants really needs to have a secondary dumpster or something like that, because they don't seem to be able to contain the amount of waste that they put into those dumpsters without having it overflow and make it dangerous for the pavement or people that are even walking near there.
Yeah. So Mayor, we do have our drivers. We have some fantastic commercial drivers, and a lot of times they'll come back and they'll report to us, hey, such and such business, last 3 weeks I've been there, there's excess material sitting beside the dumpster. Can you guys reach out and call? So typically they'll come in and they'll notify us that there is an ongoing issue there. It's not just a one-time clean out, sorry, it's full. And they'll come back in and we'll get with our admin staff and track down the property owner and let them know, hey, we have, you guys are on a 4-yard. We'd like to, give you the price for a 6-yard or increase a day of service. And most of them are receptive to it. Mm-hmm. We try and document some of the issues that we do have, just so that way it's logged that we've been having an ongoing issue there, and most of them are pretty receptive of it, and they're understanding. So, but the biggest thing is just the notification. Sometimes the employees or the staff members aren't relaying that they're having an issue, and maybe the business owner doesn't frequent it that often. But if there is a couple that you'd like to talk about, like, we can definitely reach out and let them know. And a lot of people just don't know we offer 6 days a week, or they don't know they can have a larger dumpster. It comes and goes. They throw it away, and it gets picked up, and it's all good in their mind. But like I said, I think that we can do a better job of reaching out.
Thanks, Brady. Councilman Tenney.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad to hear you've got a system within your department to monitor that. We don't need to have the mayor driving up and down alleys, checking restaurant dumpsters. That's good news. He's got enough other things to do. I just want to double check a figure that you gave. Did you say 250 tons of waste material a day is typical?
A day, yep.
Holy smokes, that's 1 million pounds every other day. That's fantastic, the great work that you do helping us out. That would back up really quickly if we had a flu, like you mentioned, or if something went sideways. So I'm glad to hear more about the great work that you folks do, and appreciate you very much.
pretty phenomenal operation.
1 million pounds every 2 days. That's I can't get over.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to echo Councilman Tenney's remark there, I think it was in the early days of the war in Ukraine where they had suspended trash service to Kyiv for a number of days. And there was a resident of Kyiv that said, the most glorious sound I've heard in all of my life is the sound of a trash truck once it's gone away. So I'm a big believer that this is kind of the nuts and bolts of what our city does. And my hat's off to all the hard people working in your department, because it's one of those things that I think most of us take for granted. Like maybe some restaurant owners, you just put it out there and it goes away. But man, if it goes away, it has a real impact on a lot of people's lives. So I echo Councilman Tenney's remarks. Thank you for all the hard work you guys are doing. And it's good to kind of put a spotlight on this. And I'm hopeful that this rate increase will help kind of be a stopgap to some of the personnel issues you've had, and was really touched by what Brandon said at that study session when we had the increase across the board for all city employees, because, again, it's an essential service in my mind. The one question I do have, well, I have two, actually, I should say. With the recycling, I know in the past I'd heard, I think from Gwen Rowich, about this idea that sometimes we're sending that stuff down to the HERF, right? Am I correct?
MRF.
Sorry, MRF. HERF is Highway User Funds. MRF, which is the recycling. And is there a cost, or is there challenges associated with people not sorting the recycling correctly? And I guess the twofold kind of follow-up to that is, I assume that's the case, that there's ongoing challenges with that. Is there things that our council can do, or that we can kind of, public relations stuff we can do to kind of make that part easier for the recycling piece?
Yeah, so the recycling, there is contamination. A lot of it is the difference between reuse and recycle.
Sure.
So there's a handful of people that, it's all walks of life. I'm going to cut down a tree and it's going to turn into a piece of paper if it goes in that can. Or it goes, I mean, but honestly, it has to work on outreach. And we've been working on that over the last couple of years. Carrie's helped out with some outreach, some of our admins, of letting people know. But I'd say the most common mistake is bagging your recyclables.
Right.
So they're supposed to be loose in the container, dumped, because when it gets down to that MRF, that material recovery facility, there's so much material going in on a conveyor belt. The first line of defense is they have 8 or 10 people that pre-sort. So literally they're just grabbing trash and non-recyclable material as fast as they can.
Right.
Before it goes through all the optical sorters and air sorters. But that's the biggest thing. So I think the outreach can help with that. The costs, there are costs associated with recycling. And there is, and it does reflect on your bill, so your blended rate of however much that material was worth. So the cleaner we can get it, the better off we are.
So is there a resource that I could point a constituent to and say, hey, if you're not sure what to put in the blue can, go here?
Yeah. So on our city webpage at prescott-az.gov, services and safety, trash and recycle. I know it takes a little while to get there. Or you can do prescottrecycles.com, and that takes you right to that page. We have we have the Recycle Wizard. It's a small little widget that you can type in material, and it can tell you if it goes in the trash or it goes in the recycle container. And there's just a quick reference guide, PDF. That's something that's easy to hang on the fridge, and it's got simple shapes and common items, and then it has some do's and don'ts to kind of break some stuff down.
Excellent. I love it. And I'll incorporate it into my announcements in the voting session today so that we can kind of continue to get out the word. Because again, to me, it's one of the things that we can do to support you guys is outreach. And if we do that, there's some return on investment. The second thing I wanted to mention is, and I mentioned this because Councilman Moore is not here, but I know that I think he had a conversation with Ashley about the idea of when we do the big bulk trash collection thing, a lot of times people are doing brush at that same time. Is there efficiency that we can pick up if we have, like, say, a wood chipper trailing behind instead of kind of duplicating that process? And I don't know if you can speak to that or...
Yeah, so ultimately it can be done, but it comes down to personnel, and that's some of the ask today, to look at other options, stuff that hasn't been feasible in the past. Obviously, when that material is getting commingled, we can't run it through the chipper at that time and offer that product out to residents and customers of the transfer station. So anything that we can divert, it helps. It saves airspace at the landfill. Overall, it's a thing that we can definitely look at in the future going forward, or see what other options are out there. I mean, I think that there's a couple other things. I know the city does some chipping through a couple different departments, but definitely something that we could look at if we had adequate staffing levels to maybe combine or separate those two events.
Makes a lot of sense. And again, just Brady, Janet, thank you guys for the hard work, and please convey my appreciation to all the people on the ground level as well.
Councilwoman Cantelmi.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to say, I was anticipating this coming through my desk, and I was thinking just on based on the sheer cost of the diesel fuel, that we would see a much bigger rate increase than, and this is for the benefit of our residents, $1.33. That's amazing to me. And cumulatively, going even at 228 or to 2028, it's a total of I think around a $7 increase over all that time from today, if I'm reading correctly. That's very impressive that we're, for the residential now, $1.33 rate increase. That's, in today's world, amazing to me. There's nothing that's only gone up $1.33. But I did have a question a little bit further down on the rate adjustments. I did notice there was quite of an increase in the roll-off cost. Would that be attributed to the gasoline? And my second part of that question is, do you, as a user of roll-offs for many years in my construction company, do you price that kind of check Waste Management out and some of the other companies that provide roll-offs? Are you competitive or a little low below the rate?
I would say that we are below the rate currently. And with that, roll-off is it's almost kind of like a hidden service. There's a lot of people that just assume roll-off service and it automatically goes to the green boxes, but it is one, and I think that Dave will kind of drill down into that into his presentation on comps and stuff like that, just industry standard, that maybe we'll be able to answer that first part of that.
Do you happen to have the numbers on that, in terms of the construction industry and their usage of your product on later?
So I think that's going to be a Mr. Davis
Okay.
question.
All right. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Rusing?
Thank you. I just would like to point out that currently we're paying $4.75 a week, which is less than a chai latte. And then after 5 years, it will still probably be less than a chai latte. So I also want to compliment you on, I have frequented the transfer station over the years, and when it's busy on Saturdays, I'm impressed with the traffic flow, the lack of waiting, the lack of lines, because you'll have people out there directing traffic and keeping things going. And the employees at the transfer station have always been very polite and helpful, so I've always been impressed with them. So thank you.
Appreciate that. We'll pass that along.
Councilman Shishka?
Thank you, Mayor. Best snow removal reports I've ever seen. Thank you.
Yeah, well, just to clarify, Brady's evil twin is Brian Scott, and Brian Scott is actually in charge of snow removal, so we'll definitely share that with him, but he will be so happy to hear that. And he's also going to be really happy to hear that Brady got credit for his work. So I'll share that as well. But Brady, I will tell you that I've been in the industry for over 25 years. Brady's team runs the most efficient by far, and they are also the most pleasant human beings I've worked with ever. They're a great team. Brady's one of the best leaders, present company included, Michael. But Brady's team gets along really well, and he's a big part of why they show up every day, because he is such a good supervisor. So we're very lucky to have him, and I'm very happy to be here.
Well, thank you all. I agree. I think your staff does a terrific job, and they're very reliable and predictable. And even sometimes when they're rolling up my street, if some of our newer residents don't know exactly where to place their cans, they'll even stop and get them. It's just, you never hear that from a true commercial operation. So even though Brian doesn't want to write those updates, we appreciate, Brady, you sending those out to us. So thank you very much.
All right, so at this point, Mr. Davis will come and give you the dollars and cents. We promised Brady did the nuts and bolts. Mr. Davis did the nuts. Gosh, Dollars and cents, please.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm Dave Davis. I'm the president and founder of MSW Consultants. We're a solid waste consulting firm. We provide financial, economic, and public policy advice exclusively to local jurisdictions, so we don't work for any private haulers. And we've been in business for about 20 years, and over that time, we provided consulting services to over 80 local jurisdictions. We're located in Southern California, and we have about 8 employees. So today, I want to kind of give you an overview of the report that was included in your packet. And I also wanted to kind of start off by saying some of you may remember me from about 4 years ago because we did the previous rate study for the city of Prescott. And in that rate study, we recommended 5 sequential adjustments, the last of which was going to occur on July 1st of 2023. The city, a few months ago, realizing that economic circumstances have changed a little bit in the last year or so, or 2 or 3, decided to kind of get a jump start on that and do the rate study again now. So with that, I want to, on this next slide, this presentation is going to be organized into 5 groups. I'm going to talk about the background and objectives, the work we performed and the assumptions that we made. And then it's also organized into kind of a macro and a micro sections, where the macro is the overall budget and the money coming into the enterprise fund. And then the micro part of it is what your ratepayers see when they get their bill. And then we're going to talk about how those rates that your ratepayers pay compare to those in other jurisdictions. And we're also going to talk about roll-off. So by way of background, as it's already mentioned, that there's a enterprise fund, and it's got 3 divisions, commercial, residential, and transfer station. And then part of the residential is these additional services, which I want to mention that these are things that are not offered by other private companies, such as your household hazardous waste collection and bulky collection. These are kind of all built into your current rates. As far as the objectives of the study, what we're trying to do is there's several different objectives, and we want to accomplish those objectives in the best way possible. Sometimes they conflict, right? Sometimes you want to give people an economic incentive to recycle, but when you do that, it doesn't always cover the cost of recycling. So one of the biggest objectives that we have when we do the rate study is we want to generate enough revenue to meet the financial obligations of the enterprise fund so that the enterprise fund can enable the city to meet its objectives, which is to provide a high-quality service for recycling and disposal, and to also promote health and safety and keep a clean city, right? You don't want trash laying all around your city. So you want to accomplish that, you need the resources to accomplish that. And then we want to design rates that have the appropriate pricing signal to individual consumers so that they match the services that they subscribe to. So on the next slide is just an overview of the key assumptions that we made in making our financial projections. We assumed that inflation was going to be 3%, and this is over the whole 5-year period. So you've seen on the news that inflation's more like 6-8% recently. If we had built 6-8% into this model over 5 years, the rates would have been a lot higher. So we're trying to be conservative, trying to be hopeful that over time, inflation's only going to be about 3%. The volume growth is based on kind of the historical growth. And then we've also got some 2 more key assumptions. One is, it's not on the slide, we've assumed that we're going to add 9 new positions. And you probably saw this in the report. And I think Brady and Janet can talk a lot about why those positions are needed. The other significant assumption is that the city is planning to spend about $24 million over the next 5 years. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But that $24 million, we're projecting that some of that's going to be what I call rate funded or pay-go, pay-as-you-go, where you pay it out of your current resources. And about $12 million is going to be debt funded. So on the next slide, I just want to talk about the financial plan part of this, just what it is. It's basically your planned capital expenditures, your operating results, which is the difference between your revenues and your current expenses. And then we're going to talk about the rate adjustments and then how those operating results result in your cash balance over time. Before we do the financial plan, I just wanted to give you a slide of the planned capital expenditures. So what this table shows down the left-hand column, it describes what capital purchases are going to be made, and then over the top, it tells you what year those are planned to be made in. And you can see here, one of the most significant is the upgrade to the transfer station. And that's going to start in fiscal 2025 with a master plan. And then that master plan, out of that master plan, there'll become some architectural drawings and some construction specs and things like that. And that money is planned to be spent in fiscal 2027. So that's a big part of what's driving these rate increases. But the other thing that's kind of keeping them smooth over time is that the city's planning to debt fund a significant portion of that. Does that make sense? Okay. And this just basically shows how that $24 million is going to be funded over time. So there'll be a little bit of debt funding in fiscal 24 and 25. Most of the debt funding will be in 2027. And this next slide, it graphically shows the financial plan. And what this slide does is the blue bars are your revenue. So down the left-hand column is the amount of annual revenue, and it's also your cash balance. And then going from right to left are these fiscal years. So the blue is your money coming in, and the dark red is your ongoing operating expenses that happen every year. And then the light red is your what we call rate-funded capital expenditures, or PAYGO. And those vary from year to year. And what this chart does is it shows you basically how much money's coming in and how much money's going out when you compare the height of the bars. So for example, in fiscal 2024, even though that blue bar and the dark red bar are kind of the same, which means that your ongoing operating expenses are pretty similar to your revenues, in that year you've got some capital costs that cause your cash going out the door to be more than what cash is coming in. As a result, that green line, which is the line that represents your operating cash, goes down. And then the yellow line we have there as a target balance. And what we've decided is that the target balance needs to be at least 15% of your ongoing operating expenses. So our goal here, and I'll show you another graph. This is the graph that would happen if you did not adjust rates. If you only continued with the rate adjustment that was scheduled for July of 2023 and you didn't adjust any rates after that, and you continued on this capital plan and adding these new positions, this is what would happen to your enterprise fund. You'd run out of money in fiscal 2025. And the green bar would go below, the green line would go below the yellow line in 2024. So our goal here is to set rates where your cash balance stays above the 15% minimum target balance. And now I'm going to talk about the rate adjustments themselves. Just to summarize, on the residential, we're planning 3 adjustments at about 7% per year. And these would start in March 1st of 2023, and then they would happen on January 1st of each subsequent year. So the first rate adjustment would happen March 1st of 2023, and then the next one would happen January 1st of 2024. And then after those 7%, there'd be 3 of those at 7%, and then 3 adjustments at approximately 4%. And then on the commercial side, we're proposing that those rates go up 8% per year. And they would happen on the same dates as the residential. And on the transfer station charges based on the weight of the load. So when you bring your vehicle in, they'll weigh it, and based on how many tons you're bringing in, that's what they charge. And we're planning on 2 increases of $10 per ton per year. And I'll show you the actual rates here in a minute. I'm just trying to give you like an overview of what's going to happen. And then after that, they're going to go up by $7 per ton per year thereafter. And then there's a minimum load charge that's now $14, and we're proposing that be taken to $20 a ton. And now these are the actual rates that are planned to be adjusted. So most of your residents pay $19 a year, plus another 50 cents on top of that for the landfill closure fee. And we're proposing that that go from $19 up to $20.33 in the first year. And then you can see the adjustment amount each year thereafter. So the adjustments are going to range from $1.52, and then they're going to go down a little bit towards the end at $1.06. And then for an additional cart, right now you have to pay $8.27. We're recommending that go to an even $11. And we're recommending that the landfill closure fee remain the same. And an important thing here is that your residents receive a recycle cart at no charge. And that'll be important a little bit later. On the multifamily customers, up to 4 units, they generally share a 300-gallon container. Oftentimes, this will be paid by the landlord or the property manager and be passed through to the tenants. The monthly rate now for that 300-gallon container is $46.37, and we're proposing that goes up by $3.71, and then you can see the rating adjustments thereafter. On the commercial, these are the most common rates. There's a lot of rates depending on the size of container and the frequency of service. These are rates for the most common sizes of containers for once per week service. And probably the most common level of service is a 3-yard bin once a week. So if you look up there, right now your businesses are paying $76.43, and we're proposing that that go up by $6.11 to $82.54, and then you can see the rates increase thereafter. And then the tipping fee adjustments, currently the tipping fee at the transfer station is $72, and we're proposing that that go to $82 and then $92, and then increase by $7 per year thereafter. And then we have other rates. There's the minimum load charge I previously mentioned. If people bring in clean brush, the rate per ton is a little bit less. And then if they bring clean and inert debris, that is currently $27.50, and that's proposed to go to $35. So now, if these rate adjustments are implemented, then it's a little brighter picture. And what this shows is that even though you have some years where you have more money going out than coming in, it's going to make that cash balance swoon a little bit. But over time, we're able to keep the actual cash balance above that yellow line. And that's our goal, is to generate rates that will generate enough revenue to provide for the financial resources of the enterprise fund. And then you can see, starting in 2027, the debt service is going to go up as we borrow money for that transfer station upgrade. So finally, I want to compare the rates in the city of Prescott with rates in other jurisdictions. And it's a little challenging because a lot of the rates that are paid by other ratepayers are paid by private companies, and they used to have their rates on their website, but now they don't have them on their website. And we reached out to them to see if there was any kind of publicly available information, and we didn't really get much back, which might be understandable. But what was interesting is that WM, they do have their rates on their website. So we went in and we looked up, we'd take an address in Prescott Valley, we type it into WM's website, and these are the rates that we got back. And what's interesting is that, so for example, in Prescott Valley, if you want a trash cart, according to their website, it's $22.68. But, you want a recycling cart in addition to that, it's another $21.65. Whereas the city of Prescott, they provide a recycling cart as a bundled rate as part of that service. So your rates are very competitive with that type of situation. So what this shows is the rate for a single trash cart, a recycling cart, and an additional trash cart for these jurisdictions. And then we went and got the city of Flagstaff and the city of Scottsdale. And in relation to those jurisdictions, the city of Prescott's rates are competitive. These are the residential rates. And then finally, we did kind of the same thing with the commercial rates. The only rates that we were really able to get that were comparable is we went onto WM's website and we typed in a restaurant address in the city of Prescott, and these are the rates that we got back. So in relation to WM's rates, the city's commercial rates are very competitive. So in conclusion, these rates are going to accomplish the objectives of providing enough money for the solid waste division to accomplish its mission, and it's also going to keep rates competitive in relation to other jurisdictions. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any. Oh, roll-off. Let me talk about roll-off. So we called around for some roll-off rates, and the rate that was being charged is like $125. So roll-off gets charged on a haul plus dump basis most of the time. So there's a haul charge to come and remove the box, and then they'll charge based on the number of tons that are in that box. And you were charging $125. I called around, and you're way under market. So the increase in roll-off loads is not based on a cost analysis, it's based on a market analysis. So now I'm recommending that you charge $180 for a roll-off load plus dump, and I think you're still going to be competitive in relation to your competitors. So now I'm happy to answer any questions.
Connie, do you want to ask a question?
I can if you'd like me to.
We're talking about rates.
Well, again, having been a longtime user of roll-offs, where they get you is on the overweight charges, and that's just part of it. You have a limit, and if you've got a line that's actually inside the dumpster and that you're supposed to stay down below, that doesn't always happen, but anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I know this type of rate structure kind of reminds me of some of the homeowners associations that I've lived in. And sometimes the board members don't want to raise rates because they're going to get a little criticism. And therefore, they allow the capital to not be properly funded, and then they have to do a huge assessment, which is really difficult to deal with. So you're much better off bringing the rates up in a reasonable manner. Always compare them to competitive other municipalities to make sure that you're competitive. And I think really some of our rates right now are probably a little bit too low. I mean, I'd rather see them come up a little bit and then not have to have them really escalate 4 or 5 years down the road. Mark, maybe you can answer this question. Why are we proposing debt funding on a lot of this capital rather than have it maybe funded more through rates? Because this is really almost a fee-based question. For those people who use the service, they should be paying for it, right? And not have every single resident have to pay for it, whether they use the service or not.
Thank you, Mayor. Mark Woodfill, Budget and Finance Director. The debt proposal in the thing is for about half the debt, and it's primarily tied to the expansion of the transfer station, which is why it's being proposed to be a debt financing, is because it's going to be a $10, $12 million expansion that'll be utilized over the next 20 years. So those people who utilize it over the next 20 years will be repaying that debt through the rates over that 20-year period, as opposed to other capital, which is much shorter term.
Yeah, so in essence, we're front-loading the capital costs and then paying off that debt through rates.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and you got
users who use the service.
Right. You build the station up front, then as they use it, they pay it with the debt. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, that makes sense. But I was looking at some of the escalating rates here. I mean, they're big jumps. Very modest at the beginning, but when you look at solid waste from 2023 to 2027, that's a 60% increase. That's a large increase, and it makes it a little bit difficult to adjust to that. So having maybe a little bit more front-loaded and not have so much back-loaded, it's probably a little bit easier to adjust your family budget.
Well, again, I deferred to Dave Davis on why the rates are structured the way they are.
Well, I think they are front-loaded because the residential rates, you kind of have some catching up to do. That's why they're 7% at the beginning, and then we kind of tap on the brakes and they go to 4%. So I think they're structured kind of like what you're talking about, where we're trying to get caught up at the beginning, and then later in the time, those residential rates aren't going up 7%. The commercial rates need to be going up 8% for the whole period, but the residential rates, we're tapping on the brakes. Does that make sense?
Well, I know I was here on council when you did your presentation 4 years ago, and we knew that the cost for vehicles was going to dramatically escalate because we were in that economic down period, and we were just trying to keep all the trucks moving where we weren't replacing. We were keeping the drivetrains and the engines, and then we'd maybe replace some of the upper structure. But eventually, we knew that the whole fleet was going to have to be replaced, and now we're seeing the cost escalation of rates to be able to pay for it. So we can't go back and say we should have probably raised those a little higher 4 years ago, and that way we wouldn't have to have this big steep incline at the end. But you know, you got to deal with the realities, right?
Yeah, it is what it is.
Thank you very much, Dave. Any other questions, concerns? No?
Mayor and Council, that concludes our presentation for today. We'll be back on January 24 to talk about the adoption.
All right, so for the media here, we'll just let the public realize that, you know, we still have a very, very low solid waste rate, and we're paying for really some high performance both in our mechanical vehicles, accessories, and being prepared to eventually upgrade the transfer station. So don't focus so much on that little increase on your utility bill. Focus on the fact that you've been enjoying some very low rates for a long time. Thank you very much. Any other comments or concerns? This study session is adjourned.